We might be past the cloud announcement season, but that doesn't mean we don't have new and exciting announcements in the Azure world to get to. Microsoft has given us several new gifts this Christmas season, so let's dive in. For Pluralsight, I'm David Tucker, and this is the December edition of Cloud Tracker for Microsoft Azure. We have some powerful featured announcements and a whole slew of platform updates that you need to know about, so let's dive in. First up, I have a question for you. Do you feel that you have done enough load testing of your Azure workloads? Most people I speak with say no, but Microsoft wants to make this process a bit easier for you. Microsoft announced a public preview of Azure Load Testing at the end of November. This managed service leverages Apache JMeter scripts to perform load testing and performance analysis for your Azure-based applications. Now, what's great about this is that it doesn't stop there. It also integrates with Azure Monitor so that you can see all of the essential metrics for your load testing in one dashboard. There is also the ability to incorporate this load testing into your CI/CD pipeline with either GitHub Actions or Azure Pipelines to ensure a base level of performance before deploying to production. Check out the link in the episode notes for more information, as well as a link to a quick start to get started with your first load testing resource. Next up, we continue to see Microsoft push forward with more Azure Kubernetes Service or AKS updates. This month we have a trio of updates designed to ease management and improve the security of your managed Kubernetes workloads. First up, you can now launch a Kubernetes cluster without any local account. This means you can rely on Azure AD without the local account, which can act as a backdoor that is difficult to audit. You can now address this by simply passing the Disable Local Accounts flag when creating a new cluster. Next, support for auto upgrade with AKS is now generally available. And with this capability, you can configure your cluster to upgrade when a new node image or cluster version is available. This feature reduces the overall maintenance that you need to perform for your AKS workloads. Finally, you can now have AKS automatically rotate certificates for you. According to Microsoft, AKS will now automatically rotate non-CA certificates on both the control plane and agent nodes before they expire with no downtime for the cluster. Now, this capability hasn't yet been rolled out to all regions, so check out the episode notes for the supported regions. For our final featured announcement, we will be looking at VM applications, part of the Azure Compute Gallery. This new feature, in public preview, enables you to define application packages in various methods, including PowerShell, the CLI, and ARM templates, which can then be versioned and applied to a new or existing VM or VM scale set. There is even the ability to bake in a level of configurability that can be customized at deployment time. Now, there are some significant limits on what you can do during this public preview, so take a look over the notes if you want to dive in and learn more about this feature. For the platform updates, let's kick things off with the updates to the current and planned global infrastructure for Azure. First up, the new cloud region in Sweden is now available, including availability zones. Now, as you would expect, there is also a big emphasis on sustainability with this data center, just as we saw when Microsoft launched West US 3 in Arizona. Next, we aren't going to leave Europe just yet, as Microsoft has announced one of their next regions will be in Belgium, and this one will also have availability zones. Now, with this being just the initial announcement, we don't have an expected launch date, but as always, stay tuned into Pluralsight and we'll keep you posted when it finally does launch. And speaking of availability zones, the availability zones for the existing East Asia region, which is in Hong Kong, are also generally available. Next up, we'll move from global infrastructure to storage. Azure Blob Storage now has SFTP support in public preview in selected regions. Unlike some other cloud providers, yes, I'm talking about AWS, Microsoft is offering this in a completely serverless model. Now, this is just a single setting to enable this capability for a Blob Storage account. Check out the link for more information on how to handle some complexities such as authentication and permissions. Next, you can get more power out of the run command feature when managing VMs or VM scale sets. This new capability, which is in public preview, enables you to set a custom script timeout, run a script under a different user account, or even deploy the run command resources to an entire scale set, and more. Check out the notes if you're interested in streamlining your VM management with run command. Now, have you ever wanted to leverage a custom OpenID provider with App Service or Azure Functions? Well, if so, you are in luck, as this support is now generally available. You can click on the link in the notes for this announcement and get step-by-step instructions for adding an OIDC provider. Next, have you ever wanted to support a Wildcard listener on Azure Application Gateway? If so, this feature is also now generally available. Now, this capability is hugely beneficial for multi-tenant SaaS applications planning to use a subdomain per tenant. Check out the announcement in the episode notes. Now you can leverage shortcodes with Azure Communication Services, but note that this is just in public preview. Wow, all of that, and we're only halfway through the platform updates. Okay, let's keep going. So next, if you use Postgres with Azure Database, we have not one, but two updates. First, Flexible Server is now generally available, and Geo-redundant backup and restore for Flexible Server is now in public preview. Also, Azure VPN NAT is generally available, and Azure Functions now supports Node.js version 16. Now, next, if you leverage Azure SQL alongside Azure Functions, you will be excited to learn that we now have input and output bindings with Azure SQL for Azure Functions. This functionality is now in public preview. Next up, the web-based VM selector tool mentioned in a previous episode is now generally available. And this tool becomes even more critical as there is a continual stream of new VM types to consider. Now, finally, we have a deprecation date that is quickly sneaking upon us. So if you've been leveraging Azure Scheduler, you have until January 31st of 2022 to move those workflows over to Logic Apps. Now, if that frustrates you, remember that Microsoft announced this back in 2018. Yes, this predated our knowledge of social distancing and the coronavirus, so honestly, they have been pretty generous with this deprecation window. For our learning resource this month, I have a course from the Pluralsight library, Microsoft Azure App Services for Administrators, The Big Picture. So if you're new to Azure, or even just new to Azure App Services, this course will get you pointed in the right direction for what it takes to manage these workloads. Now, this course is the first course on an entire path of courses focused on this topic, so you can start your learning journey right from there. Now, so much for a slow announcement month. This month reminds us that the cloud continually evolves, even immediately after a big conference season. So have a great holiday season, and we'll see you next month to discuss what's new in Azure here on Cloud Tracker.